Hi everybody. What a great day it is again today. I'm going to do a little bit of fishing while we chat. Cast my line out. Hopefully, sometimes you have to be really patient when you're fishing, don't you? Oh, wait a sec. I think I've got something. Just a second. I'm going to reel it in, reel it in. Oh, where's my net? There. Okay. Oh, he's a tricky little fish. There, I caught him. I have a fish in my net. Wow, look at that. That's awesome. You know, in Jesus' day, they did a lot of fishing too, but they didn't tend to use fishing poles. Do you know what's wrong with the fishing pole? I like mine, but how many people can use this fishing pole at one time? That's right, just one. And how many fish can we catch at one time? Just one fish at a time. Well, they had a lot of people to feed, and so that using a fishing rod wasn't a really good or efficient way to catch a lot of fish. So they used nets, but not like my net here, because there aren't many fish that would fit into that either. In Jesus' time, they had huge nets, and it took more than one person to manage the net. You know, one day when Jesus was starting to put together his group of 12 disciples, and that's what we're talking about this week, he was on the Sea of Galilee, and you know how Jesus was such a good teacher and he was telling stories all the time. Well, he saw two fishermen, Peter and Andrew, and he said, "Bring your boat to shore and let me climb in and then row me out and I'll preach from my boat." Well, they said, okay. So Jesus spent that day telling his stories and talking to people, encouraging them to follow him. And at the end of the day, when his stories were done, he said to Andrew and Peter, "Now cast your nets, put your nets out and try to get some fish." And they said, "Oh, Jesus, we were fishing all last night and we didn't catch a single fish." Jesus said, "Cast your nets." So they threw the nets over the side of the boat. And remember, these are huge. How many fish do you think they caught? They caught so many they couldn't even count them. There were hundreds of fish in this net. In fact, there were so many that Andrew and Peter couldn't pull the net into the boat by themselves. They had to call James and John, who were fishermen in another boat, and they came alongside and they helped as well. So these nets were massive. And you know, this is sort of the way that Jesus wants us to fish for him as well. Because while fishing was really important in Jesus' day, Jesus didn't choose the 12 disciples as good fishermen. He chose them because he wanted them to fish for men, for people like you and me. He knew they were going to change the world by telling people about Jesus and about his stories and about his miracles and about his teachings. And he knew that these 12 men could go out and they would spread the word across the land, and more people would begin to follow Jesus. You know, that's part of what we get asked to do as Christians who follow Jesus. It's kind of like being a disciple. We tell other people about Jesus and we encourage them to follow Jesus just the way we do. Now, we don't use nets and fishing poles, and neither did the disciples. They simply talked about Jesus. They told his stories, and they told the miraculous things that happened when people believed in him and believed in God and became a member of the kingdom of God and followed him. Well, I think that is pretty cool. Now, as I mentioned, there were 12 of the disciples. And Jesus chose them all for very specific reasons. They all had talents that nobody else had. And he chooses you and me for the talents that we possess. You can do something that nobody else can do. You might not even know it yet, but you can. You are so special to God in your own way that God and Jesus are choosing you to go out and spread the word of Jesus and bring more people to church, bring more people to follow Jesus. And how amazing it is that God knows every one of us by name. Do you know what? When I was a little girl, there was a television show on, and it was called Romper Room, and I loved it. Now, Romper Room, this was my net. Now it's going to be a magic mirror. So you're just going to have to work with me. Use your imagination on this one. But Miss Helen or Miss Nancy or Miss Mary Ann, because there were a few different teachers on Romper Room, but they used to hold up this magic mirror at the end of every show, and they would say, "Romper, stomper, bomper, boo, tell me, tell me, tell me, do. Did my friends have fun at play today?" And she would look through her magic mirror right through the television screen, and she could see children all around the world playing. Well, she used to call out, she would say things like, "Hey, Joe and Susie and Mary, how was your day today?" She almost never saw Elizabeth. That's my full name. But it's so important when we can use somebody's name, when we choose them above anybody else to do the work that we need them to do. Have you ever had a job that was so special that you needed a certain person to do it? I bet you have friends that can do things you can't do. And I bet mom and dad can do things that you can't do. You can do things that nobody else can do. And one of them may be talking to your friends about Jesus. And then someday, maybe it'll be like Romper Room. It'll be maybe like Jesus came to Romper Room. And he'll look through his magic mirror and he'll say, "Maxim, Tiana, Evie, Owen, Nora Lynn, I see you. I have a job for you to do that nobody else can do." Let's see, let's try again. Justin, Naomi, Serena, and I see Dorothy, and Simon, and I see Tristan, and Felix, and Rosie, and Theo, and Kemba, too. I know I haven't mentioned all of your names, but maybe I'll bring my magic mirror someday soon, and we'll look for more people. But right now, I want you to think how special it is that Jesus knows your name, and he knows what special job you and only you can do for him. So will you listen for that call this week and in the weeks to come? And maybe Jesus will be asking you to be fishers of men and women and boys and girls. I hope so. Listen hard. See you next week. Bye, everybody.